Hello and welcome to another unscripted reviews. I have no idea why I keep doing this, even though I keep saying that I should script myself better for future anime reviews, but I don't know, I'm just too lazy to actually write things. And I write all day long at work. I don't wanna have to write things more at home. So let's go for another review. So the next anime I'm gonna talk about in this video is Hakumei to Mikochi. To be frank, my first impression of this anime, I cannot exactly accurately express my first impression of this anime because I have read the manga before this anime is released, and I really love the manga. In fact, when the anime was announced, I was really happy because I really like the manga. The manga was very imaginative, was very fun. The characters are very likable, with unique personality and unique looks and appearance. Okay, I'm jumping ahead, but what about the anime? First, I want to talk about the conversion from the manga to the anime because the manga has a very distinct art style. If I recommend any of you who is planning to watch this or has already watched this to take a look at the manga and see for yourself, because how should I describe it? Admittedly, I don't really read that many manga compared to my time during when I was younger, and I cannot really say that the 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 bar or the standard of the manga nowadays. But basically, the manga is has a very detailed art style, detailed line art. It has it has lots and lots of details. If any of the panels in the manga is turned into a one-shot illustration, yeah, if you submit it into Danboru, it will go into the pool of a heavy detail pool. I forgot what's the name of the pool. Basically, it's the pool that to collect pictures where the background is very messy, very detailed, full of stuff and details, and uh, that's it. The manga is full of details. The artwork is gorgeous. The it is definitely is written and drawn by people who are and passionate in world building, making their own fantasy world full of details that they enjoy themselves building without actually having much chance to tell other the viewers. Basically, imagine that imagine if you are writing for a magical world, but your story is about your standard adventure story, but instead of just writing a very basic setting, you also establish and write the whole political and sociological and economical background of the world, and then you establish what kind of economy the people in that magical world engages in, and how trades and how economical activities are done. Basically many settings like that. Imagine if everything you write everything about spice and wolf and how the trades are done, but that is just a side point towards your main story. Basically that is it. There's so much detail. If you read the manga, there's so much detail, especially after every chapter the writer will write like a whole page of afterthoughts afterwards, describing history and describing more world building. It is very elegant. I really recommend any of you to read the manga. And oh wow, I already talked about 5 minutes, but I haven't touched the anime yet. Okay. Mm, the anime, to describe Hakumei to Mikochi, the genre is a fantasy slice of life. Yes, it's a slice of life, even though it's a fantasy setting. And unlike what you might think, it's a fantasy setting, but the characters are not humans, but rather Hakume and Mikochi themselves are tiny humans, and they live with a bunch of talking animals and various other small humans. They are a few inches tall, and the anime is about slice of life, about their work, about the people they live with, and about the world they are living in. They also have some adventures because the time period is like medieval ages, because they don't have their technology is very medieval, very middle ages. And because I have read the manga, I cannot really imagine how I would feel if I watch the anime first, because the world is very creative, it's very imaginative. The writer, as I said before, the writer is definitely very passionate in developing a world, even though unlike most story, it's not really a fantasy story about action, about saving the world stuff. This kind of slice of life is actually what I have really wanted for a long time. It's a fantasy world, but just because it's a fantasy world, you don't have to make it a battle manga, battle story. I want a good fantasy world with a good slice of life, with a good world development. And Hakume to Mikochi manages to do just that. The world is from the architecture, from the how it incorporates the nature, basically the animals, like they are like how the beetles are used as transport and transportation or courier. I mean, they use like some animals they work as a transporter, and then there are a bunch of other species like cats, small cats, lizards, frogs, and toads. They all can talk they all can communicate with each other, and how they all integrate into one society and develop a civilization. Like the world is very beautiful. How should I say this? The the story. Okay. The story itself, the plot point in each episode itself is usually concerning about various stuff like their work, their daily activities, their hunting, and then involvement with the other characters, such as when they are going to town, and then they are having fun, going to bar, and then various other events. It's if one word I want to, it might not be the most exciting as how they are portrayed, might not be as the most exciting thing ever, but the idea is very refreshing. It's Yes, it's very refreshing. I think I'm gonna it's a refreshing fantasy setting. And I said this a few minutes ago about the manga art is very detailed and it's very detailed and very thick. It doesn't translate to the anime style most accurately, but it is done faithfully enough. And I like the compromise. If you see the screenshot of this anime, you can see that the line art is not is intentionally what the line art of the characters and the backgrounds are intentionally not smooth. This is a trick in art in anime, something like Basically, this is a trick to when you make the line art inconsistent, it will actually make it will actually mask the lack of how should I say this? Okay, it's really hard to describe art. I need to work on this. If you watch Granblue Fantasy, the anime, it's a terrible anime. I don't really think you should watch it. I hate it. I don't really play the game even, so I miss all the jokes and all the references. Anyways, if you watch Granblue Fantasy, you can see that you can see what I'm talking about. The line art are intentionally rough and inconsistent because otherwise the art style, I mean the art direction of the character design of the Granblue Fantasy is very detailed and has a lots of each character has lots of details like armors, like accessories and stuff. If you draw it very smoothly, you cannot draw it consistently with every frame. This have you ever watched an anime where when a character is drawn in a still frame, it looks good, but when the character starts moving, when it's actually is being animated, it looks terrible. This usually happens in a very detailed, like characters with shoujo style hair, high detailed hair. But then when the character starts to move in a still frame, it looks good. But when it starts to move, the character starts to move, it looks really terrible and inconsistent and unpleasant to look at. But this inconsistent line art, rough line art, can mask 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 the unpleasantness when the characters move. Basically, it's a art trick. And same to Hakumei to Mikochi. The rough line art in the anime makes it that it feels like it mimics the manga style. And what I'm saying is that the art of the manga style of art is practically impossible to reproduce unless you have the budget of a Hollywood budget. So this is a compromise. This is a good compromise, and I'm satisfied with the quality of the art in the anime and the animation of the anime. So I think if you are a fan of slice of life and you are looking for something different, you definitely should watch Hakumei to Mikochi. And if you are a budding writer and you want some inspiration on how to build worlds, and I recommend you to watch Hakumei to Mikochi. Like there's so many details that it is clear in this anime. So many small things like in cooking, in making, in the one of the Mikochi is Hakumei is a carpenter and a repair worker. The writers definitely at least know, or at least has researched a lot about woodworks, about various buildings and infrastructure and cooking and various things about natures and fruits and animals, biology. Basically, I'm saying that, and the writer managed to integrate into the setting really well. Basically, I'm saying that the writer has lots of knowledge, and if you want to be a writer, you definitely could afford some random knowledge about random stuff. Don't discount random trivia. And if you are really hardworking, you should definitely research on things. Don't just learn very superficial things. Like you can definitely see when a writer writes on things like, let's say a cooking anime, compare cooking anime, cooking manga to a basic cooking scene in a different anime, in different manga. there is definitely lots of difference between a normal writer trying to write a cooking scene uh, compared to exclusively cooking anime writing a cooking scene. From cooking technique, from the ingredients to the temperature, heat control, to the presentation of the food. When you research things really deeply, not just from superficial level, from surface level, it is definitely more interesting, and it adds lots of substance to your writing. Wow, I really talk a lot. It is not about Hakumei or Mikochi anymore. Anyways, and what I want to say, in Hakumei Mikochi, the writer definitely study a lot of things, and I really admire that. I really love that. That detail makes the fantasy world much more vibrant, much more exciting and magical. Yes, Hakumei Mikochi as a slice of life has a very magical setting. That's my conclusion. Anyways, thanks for listening. Good night.